This episode of The Edge is brought to you by Audible.com, offering more than 180,000 titles for smartphone, tablet, and desktop. To get a free audiobook of your choice and help Trek.fm at the same time, visit audibletrial.com/trekfm. And also by Enterprise in Space, an international program of the nonprofit National Space Society. Find out how you can help science and education and become a virtual crew member aboard the NSS Enterprise Orbiter by visiting enterpriseinspace.org. And if you want to join the conversation and share your thoughts on this episode, join the Babel Conference, our listeners group on Facebook. Just type BABEL into the Facebook search field. We look forward to seeing you there.
Hey, this is Jeff Russo. I'm the composer from Star Trek Discovery, and you're listening to Trek.fm.
What have you done out there on the edge of Federation space?
Welcome, listeners, to Postcards from the Edge. I am your host, Amy Nelson, and with me this week is Thad Hait. Thad, thank you for coming on Postcards.
Oh, you're very welcome. I'm happy to be here.
Well, we actually got to meet in person at STLV last year in August, so that was wonderful.
Well, you know, it was nice to meet you. I'm not sure how exciting it was for you to meet me.
It was. We got to breakfast, well, sort of shared after breakfast, right? So this is the first time that you are on Postcards. So why don't you tell our listeners a little bit about yourself and share with us your Trek story? Like, how did you get into Star Trek?
This is actually my very first time on Trek.fm at all.
Yes.
And yes, I've been into Star Trek since I was 7 years old. My older sister turned on TNG one time, and the rest is history.
Yeah.
I don't even remember what episode it was now. All I remember is that Worf was angry, which is like half of the episodes.
Right, so. That could be pick your episode.
But yeah, I've been really into Star Trek my whole life. In the last couple years, I got deep back into the fandom with all the stuff that celebrated the 50th anniversary, and then, of course, Discovery. I've been pretty much all Star Trek all the time lately. But I am loving Discovery. I'm enjoying the short treks, and I'm happy to be here to talk about them.
Yeah. I love every time I ask, anyone, like, how did you get into Star Trek? It usually always starts with a family member. And I just love that about Star Trek.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, well, today we are going to discuss the fan response for the fourth short trek, The Escape Artist. Now, if you would like to participate and share your response, please post your comment on the Babel Conference. That is our listeners group on Facebook. Type Babel, BABEL, into the search field, and it will come right up. So, Harry Mudd, Thad, what did you think of the short trek?
I really enjoyed it. If we go back in time to when it was originally announced that Harry Mudd was going to be on Discovery, I was not very excited about that because the Harry Mudd character in the original series, while amusing at times, was also very problematic. And but I thought Rainn Wilson overall has done a great job. He did a good job on Discovery, and I really enjoyed this one because, well, it had a lot of humor, which was Mudd's thing back on the original series, and it had some nice callbacks to the original series Mudd episodes without introducing any of the less than savory aspects of it.
Yeah, I agree. I watched it a couple of times, and just the humor in it is just so well written and so well timed.
Yes.
And how he delivers it. Like the second time I was like, oh my gosh, that's funny. Oh my gosh, that's funny. I was just laughing the whole way through. So it was really good.
And did you see that one of the Mudd androids was wearing epaulets?
Yes. Yes. I think we've got someone who mentioned that. So
yeah, that was great.
Yeah. Well, let's get to what the listeners had to say. So, Thad, why don't you start us off?
Okay. Our first listener response is from Justin Ozer, and it says, I've really enjoyed Mudd on Discovery, while I didn't like him on TOS or TAS. I wasn't sure what to expect from this short. I'll need to rewatch it. But it didn't connect for me on a first watch like the first 3 short treks did. Mudd didn't feel as interesting when the focus isn't his interaction with Starfleet, although I did appreciate the TOS connection at the end.
Yeah, so there was a little hesitation there, sort of similar to what you were saying, like, Mudd, So, Tim Robertson says, okay, Amy, I enjoyed it. It was a fun ride. Not much substance to it. No message, morals, or meanings. Just a little character piece with a little humor that Disco has been missing. It was my second favorite short, with The Brightest Star being my favorite. So, yeah, I had to give Tim a hard time because he hadn't posted anything. And I'm like, Tim, where's your comment? Get it in there. So that was that.
All right. And Serena Rodriguez says, okay, that was pretty goofy in a fun way. Very TOS DS9 after a fashion. But yeah, I would agree with that.
Really? Okay, so I obviously got the TOS, but what part of the DS9 do you think it's like a fashion after?
Well, honestly, it felt a little bit like a Ferengi episode of DS9. Like there's the complex scheme and everything falls apart, and I can definitely see the DS9 where you're going with the DS9 on that.
All right, I can see that now. I sort of got a connection almost like a Into Darkness. I mean, I know, don't send me any hate mail, but like, especially when they were in that big, when they were looking for her ship, when he was in shackles, and I was like, it just sort of felt like that big where she was looking for her ship. I don't know. I got a Into Darkness vibe with that. So I don't know. Well, Brian Diggs says, wow, save the best for last. All those replicants and Rain directed as well. Perfect aperitif to prep us for the 17th.
Yeah. And I think, it should be mentioned Rainn Wilson did a very good job directing this. I'm actually not sure what directing he's may have done in the past. I'm more familiar with his acting, but I thought he did a great job on this one.
Yeah, he has done quite a bit. Did you see his panel at STLV? Because he sort of went on about
I missed that one.
Oh, that's okay. Yeah, he's done quite a bit of directing, and yeah, he did a great job with it. I loved the angles that he chose, and it really worked for me. Yeah.
All right. Chris Trebuzio says, this episode was typical deceptive and comic Mudd. A clever magician, that Mudd. It was a nice callback episode, seeing the Tellarite and Orion races. The episode reminded me of the Enterprise episode where Archer is kept captive by a Tellarite as a bargaining chip. Yes, very much so.
Yeah, I enjoyed seeing those races and the other ones as well.
Because we don't know what that female bounty hunter, we don't know what race she was.
Yeah, exactly. All right, Rhea Papagiorgio. I hope I said your last name right, Rhea. Very funny, very TOS. Love Rainn Wilson's take on Harry Mudd. I also enjoyed his dislike of the Federation. It's always portrayed as a benevolent organization, but Mudd hints at a darker, more fascist side. And taxes, yuck. Loved how this short trek was bursting with life. So many cool characters. And the twist at the end was great. Makes me wonder if the Mudd held captive by the Klingons was an android as well, but probably not. Oh yeah, the music. You knew at the intro that something fun was coming, and love how they tied it all together at the end.
Yeah, sorry, I was thinking about whether Mudd was an android when he was held captive by the Klingons, and yeah, because this clearly takes place after that, because they mention. He mentions penetrating a space whale. So we know that. So my guess is no, that must have been the real Mudd.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
Karen Chuplis starts off with some laughing emojis and says, well, I'm smiling and chuckling. That was honestly really good. I did not expect to like this one that much, but it was hilarious. And it totally made me think Lower Decks will be fantastic. And that final scene was so original series. Well done, Star Trek. Rainn Wilson really does inhabit this role.
Yep, I think Rainn pulls off the perfect Harry Mudd. I am enjoying him very, very much. And again, there was that little bit of hesitation, what are we going to get? But, she came out liking it in the end, like we did. Wes Huntington says, this was funny and in the best TOS funny way, like Trouble with Tribbles, A Piece of the Action, or I Mud. This one drew on the funny from I Mud. However, I still think the funniest one was Runaway. So interesting there.
I mean, Runaway had some good humor, so I'll give it that. Actually, that was most of what I liked about Runaway. I didn't care too much for the story in Runaway. So I can see that, but I think this one was funnier.
Yeah.
Jason Moe says, fun episode. Probably Rainn Wilson's best work yet as Mud. I loved how what appeared to be flashbacks were actually just showing the trouble the other Mud androids were currently getting into. Great twist. I'll miss short treks and look forward to their eventual return. Discovery Season 1 was excellent, but was so serialized and epic that I found myself longing for some quieter and quirky B stories. These short treks brilliantly scratched that itch for me.
I absolutely agree, because I love episodic, I'm a TNG girl, and so these short treks were just exactly that, Jason. I completely agree. And I was like you with those, I thought they were flashbacks, but they were happening at the same time. I loved it.
So, fun story on that. I thought they were flashbacks while watching it, and then my mind didn't even put that together until I read some comments like this one and was like, oh yeah, they must have been just other androids.
I know. Well, I didn't get it till my second rewatch, because I also thought they were flashbacks as well. Kevin Lee Heaven Street says, fun episode of Short Treks. I love learning that Mud has had access to android duplicates for a long time. This new detail, combined with the fact that we see one of the Mud androids wearing his gold-braided Sgt. Pepper's-esque shoulder pads from the original series, certainly suggests that Mud is perhaps a little closer to the comedic version of the character from those old episodes than the Mud we met in Discovery Season 1.
Yeah. I think the whole point at the end of Magic to Make the Sanest Man Go Mad, I think, was showing that Mud was going off to be with Stella, and then he would turn into the Mud we saw in the original series from there. So it makes sense that this is sort of a transition to that.
Yeah. And that his comedy and it just really ties his story arc all together to combine from what we learned with Discovery to the original series. So
Jim McMahon says, I couldn't stop laughing. This was my favorite short trek yet, and the best one so far. It got continually better and better. I loved each scene where Mud tried unsuccessfully to talk his way out of custody with each captor. Rainn Wilson was brilliant.
It was so good. And does that line work on anyone? And
well, it was working on that Orion.
I know. There was a couple times when you're like, oh, he's going to believe him and they are going to work together. And then nope, they just switched like that. It was very, very good. Andrea Boot says this was a great finale for Short Treks. The story was humorous and well written, and I liked what they did with Mud. I was surprised at how much character development they managed to fit into 15 minutes and how much we learn about him in such a short space of time. Roll on the 18th and Series 2. This has left me hungry for more.
Oh, yes, definitely. I am very excited for Season 2.
Yes. Well, we did get, as mentioned a little bit before, some people really picked up on the music part. So we have a little conversation that happened on in the thread, and listeners, I would encourage you to go and read. I just picked a few of them. So yeah, why don't you read that for us, Thad?
Janessa Chiharda says, I wasn't expecting the disco music at the end, but somehow it works. And then Christopher D. Littlefield replied, it does. And check this out. In the epilogue, when Mud is sipping a jipper on the ship in orbit of a planet with a huge ocean, listen again to the incoming transmission chime. Its rhythm and tempo is identical to the way he says jippers on a beach somewhere, which is essentially what he's doing. I also think that the disco music is a callback to Magic to Make the Sanest Man Go Mad. As we recall, that episode used the
Fugees.
Was it the... Okay. Used the Fugees' We Tryin' to Stay Alive, which extensively samples the Bee Gees' 1977 hit, Stayin' Alive. Mud, as we know, is really, really good at staying alive, no matter what the moral cost. And then Janessa responded, I also think that maybe the producers and writing team is embracing the nickname Disco, and this is a nod to that. Yeah, because there was disco at the beginning, too. Like, once we saw the Discovery thing, then it did some disco. I think it's probably a combination of the two things there. I think part of it is that everybody calls it disco.
Yeah. I still don't know how I feel about disco, but it keeps on, like Discovery, they keep bringing this disco theme, just sort of salt and peppering it throughout the season. And now these short treks. And I'm like, okay, I will be on board. We can have disco. But did you notice that chime? Or
I did not.
Things?
No, that was not something that I caught at all. So I'm glad that Christopher pointed that out.
Yeah, Chris is in the music industry. He's works on Broadway and stuff like that with... I'm sorry, Chris. I know what you do. But yeah, he works in making music. And so he's got this ear, and I was really glad for his comment. So, all right. Well, we don't always read just the positive. We do talk about some of the questions and concerns that the listeners had. Joseph Stahl asks, is this episode set post iMud? That would explain his access to the androids. I know the Starfleet vessel looks like a Discovery contemporary, but short treks jump forward 1,000 years for Calypso. What's 10 years, short years for old Harry? Chris Littlefield says, I interpreted the episode as pre-iMud and saw this as the beginning of his android fetish. And then Joseph responds, says, I just did a quick rewatch of the relevant scenes of iMud. While fleeing in a damaged spaceship, Harry wandered out into unmapped space and found the planet. He considered it paradise, except for the fact that they wouldn't let him leave. They wanted to study him and learn more about human beings. In the end, Harry is eager to leave, but Kirk leaves him on the planet with the androids and 500 Stella bots.
Harcourt! Sorry.
Yeah, so I think I agree with you, Thad, in that it's sort of that in between. So we have him from Disco, and then we get this short trek, and then we see him in TOS, the iMud episodes. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I do too. I think the androids are clearly a nod to iMud, but they aren't necessarily saying that these are the androids from iMud.
Yeah.
So Duncan Barrett said, this really didn't work for me, and I loved the other 3 short treks. Also, I'm a bit confused. Aren't the Tellarites a founding member of the Federation? This one seems to know almost nothing about it. So, that's fair. The Tellarites are one of the founding members, but that doesn't necessarily mean that all Tellarites are part of the... He may not be from... Is it Tellar? I think it's Tellar is the Tellarite home planet. He might be, because he's a bounty hunter, he may never have been home, or it might not even be home for him. He may never be. So just because he's a Tellarite doesn't mean he's himself is a Federation citizen.
Okay, so that is interesting. I mean, I understood that he was a bounty hunter, and so probably, doesn't stay up on all the political going ons of his race or, what they're doing. But I didn't understand why he didn't know anything. I didn't get that he didn't know anything.
The other point is, did he actually not know anything, or was he just leading Mud on?
Right. Because he's very conniving himself. Because like I said, there was a couple times where I thought, oh, he's going to, work with Mud and not take him to Discovery, not Discovery, not give him up to the Federation, but yeah. All right. Rebecca Skipper says, though not my favorite episode, I did like the callbacks to the episode Sanus Man Goes Mad. Doesn't the appearance of android versions of Mud break canon in TOS Mud's Woman? I get the impression that Kirk is surprised. Brett Lonsway commented, says, I've added to my headcanon that Mud had already found the android planet and had them build the Muds for him prior to Norman waking up and the peculiarity of humans.
That works
so
too.
There seems to be, again, this timeline of where does this short feed into?
Yeah, and we've gotten that throughout Discovery. It's sort of like, where does this fit in with the other stuff. And some of it, I think we have to accept that some of it is going to be artistic license, and it may not work exactly as we know from the TOS timeline. But I'm sticking with, I think the androids are an homage, but not actually those androids.
Yeah. Well, and I could see, Rebecca, to your point, that it could go Discovery, then Mudd's Woman, then this short trek, then iMud. But either way, I think that short trek comes before iMud.
Yes.
So I think that little in between, I don't know if it really matters that much, but yeah.
Yeah. The fact that this isn't directly related to other things means that it could take place anytime. Well, not anytime, but you get what I mean.
Yeah, right. All right. Well, we have some final thoughts, and I just wanted to end with this. Brian Meloche says, I loved it by the end. What a great payoff. I give it 9.25 jippers on a beach somewhere out of 10. So what would you give this short trek, jippers on a beach somewhere, Thad?
If we're saying out of 10, maybe an 8. I don't know that any of the short treks were perfect in my mind, but I thought this one was really good. I actually did enjoy each short trek better than the previous one. So Runaway is my least favorite, and this is my favorite.
Oh, I'm like you. I put Runaway at the least for my list as well. I think this one, especially after the rewatches that I've done, I'm going to give it, like you, an 8 jippers on a beach somewhere out of 10. Now, I would not be able to drink 8.
Well, who knows how alcoholic a jipper is?
Yeah, right. There was a comment on the live From the Edge thread. And they're like, what is a jipper? You know, I'm like, it's a drink. And they're like, well, I know that. And I was like, well, I envision a jipper with a little umbrella sticking out of it. That's in my headcanon.
Well, if you're sipping out on a beach, that would only make sense. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Some little rum or something like that. Who knows what the alcohol is, you know, in the 23rd century. Who knows? But Brian did go on to give some additional information. He says, by the way, some information I've been able to obtain through a couple of podcasts and the CBS All Access app is that After Trek has been canceled and has been removed from the app altogether and is also not available on Amazon channels with Amazon Prime. I have also listened to Matt Mira's Star Trek The Next Conversation, both the latest regular episode and the latest Patreon episode, and can confirm that he is no longer doing the show, and it appears that CBS is no longer going to show the show either, at least for season 2 of Discovery. In fact, he is considering covering Discovery on his own podcast. Now, did you watch the After Trek episodes?
I watched some of them, depending on the guest. I was not... I watched the first one, and I was not a huge fan of Matt Mira, personally. I didn't really care for his style as the host. So then it was when there were guests that I was really interested in that I would watch, at least for them. I know that several months ago they announced they were completely retooling After Trek, and that at that time it was at least heavily implied that Matt Mira would not be returning. So this isn't that surprising, but at that time it seemed like they were saying they were still going to be doing an After Trek of some sorts. But I think the fact that they have not announced anything, and we're 2 weeks away from the first episode of season 2, yeah, that definitely looks like it's not coming back.
Yeah, I watched, like you, the first one and was completely turned off by it. But then everyone started saying, oh, it's getting better, it's getting better. And so I think I watched the last 4 After Treks, and they really did improve. And like you said, with those who came on, well, I think it was the one that Jonathan Frakes directed. So I, of course, was not going to miss that.
Sure.
So I watched that one and I was like, okay. And you actually learned, some additional extra fun stuff from the After Trek. And so I am a little sad, Matt Mira aside, that we aren't having some type of after Trek show, hosted by anyone. I don't care, but getting that and, seeing some of the fan artwork and stuff like that was pretty cool. And having the actors and the writers come on, I thought that was pretty cool. So I'm going to miss it. Not again, that much about Matt Mira, although I did think he did get better as time went on, but yeah. So that's interesting. But I think with the hype of Star Trek coming back on TV was so huge that CBS wanted to do something additional. And I think now, all right, we're season 2, the hype, that initial hype is over. So let's just stick with the episodes. And plus they've got their hands full with other series starting. Kiki. Picard.
Yeah, I suspect you're maybe slightly more excited for that than Discovery Season 2.
Oh, okay, just a little. But no, I'm so excited for Season 2.
Yeah, I'm definitely excited for both.
Yeah. So, Thad, how do you think the fans responded to our short trek here?
Well, I think overall, we had some pretty positive responses. There were a few people that were less excited by it, but I think the majority of the comments were definitely positive, and I certainly liked it, and I think that's the general consensus.
Yeah, I agree. Even the comments they were more like questions, not really any concerns, just like, well, how does this fit in? What are the Tellarites? And maybe I really think if you haven't rewatched it, the rewatch is even better than the first go round. Well, it was for me. So.
Yeah. And I think, there were definitely fewer plot holes and like weird questions about the plot than, Runaway had, for instance, for me, at least. And then Calypso just was its own thing that wasn't related to the others. It was good, but it had its own stuff going on. And then
they were familiar characters. So.
Yeah. And then Brightest Star, of course, I did really enjoy, but I think I liked this one slightly more than I liked Brightest Star.
So if I'm hearing you correct, you would put The Escape Artist, Brightest Star, Calypso, and Runaway.
Correct. Yeah, reverse order of aired is basically like with each one they got better.
Oh, yeah, there you go. All right. I'm going to say that I really did enjoy Calypso. The last 3, it's very difficult because they were so different.
Yes.
And so just by the slightest, tiniest bits of hair, I'm going to say that I like Calypso better just because of the feeling that I had from after watching it. And so I would say Calypso. And then, and I want to say Brightest Star, but I really did like The Escape Artist. But I liked just, again, by the smallest amounts, Brightest Star, then Harry Mudd. And then for me, Runaway is just way at the bottom. Yeah. That's the for sure one for me. But the first 3, I think it will just sort of depend on the mood I'm on, because I thought they all 3 were just brilliant in their own right. So that would be my ranking.
I would put Calypso higher, except it just makes me want to ask so many questions about about everything about it that we're never going to get answered, and that frustrates me.
Yeah, I can get that. I can get that for sure. Well, listeners, be sure to check out our Discovery and Short Treks coverage. Well, I guess not Short Treks anymore, not until they come back, hopefully. But you can watch Live from the Edge, and the air date and participation has changed from the Short Trek. So listeners, on after the 17th, the Live from the Edge will be Friday at 9 p.m. Eastern. So you can watch Bruce and Brandy and ask questions live, and then that will be released as a podcast on Saturday morning. Our commentary will be available as Tracks from the Edge with our wonderful Mike and Max, and those are always good. And of course, you can catch full analysis on the Edge main show with Patrick and myself To wrap up the coverage, join us for Notes from the Edge for links between Discovery and the broader franchise with Chris Jones. You will find all of these in the main feed for The Edge and in the Trek.fm master feed. We love to hear your thoughts on Discovery, and the best place to do that is the Babel Conference, our listeners group on Facebook, where I will collect your feedback for Postcards from the Edge. You can also find us on Twitter at Trek.fm or send us email using the contact form on our website at Trek.fm/contact. Choose to send to a show and select the Edge. I would love to get emails from you. So Thad, where can people find you on the interwebs, and tell our listeners about your own podcast, The Delta Flyer?
Okay, well, the easiest place to find me and where I'm most active is on Twitter. I am at Tyrannicus, which is Tyranicus. I tweet mostly about Star Trek, but some other things as well. Yes, as you mentioned, I do also host a Star Trek Voyager podcast with my friend Stuart. It's a rewatch podcast. We're currently towards the end of season 2 of Voyager. That podcast is called Delta Flyer. You can find us on iTunes or every other place you would find a podcast. And that's on Twitter as well, at Delta Flyer Pod.
Excellent. Well, you can find me here on the network, where I co-host The Edge, the main show, with Patrick Devlin. I also co-host Earl Grey with Richard Marquez and Justin Ozer, which is about the next generation. You can also find me on the Fandom Podcast Network, co-hosting Discoville, where we discuss the Orville and Discovery with my good friends Haley Stoddard, Kyle Wagner, and Kevin Reitzel. You can find me on Twitter at Miss Amy Nelson, but my favorite place is the Babel Conference. If you would like to help us keep all our shows going and even become an associate producer, visit patreon.com/TrekFM for all the details. And I would like to thank our current associate producers. They are Norman Lau, Tony Robinson, Thomas Puleo, Lisa Slack, Shoaib Mirza, Richard Rutledge, James Muldrow, Cornelia Reutner, Ryan Millett, and Chris Trebizio. Thank you so much for supporting Trek FM and especially The Edge. So it was just so much fun talking Star Trek Discovery, and I hope that we can do this again soon.
Absolutely. I would love to.
So join us next time for another episode of Postcards from the Edge for Season 2. Hailing frequencies open.